Hello and welcome to the Ham Productions podcast. It's Halloween week, so I've been watching spooky movies at home, but what's really spooky is the lack of horror movies in theaters. No big horror movies at the box office this week. We covered Black Phone 2 last week, but nothing out for Halloween week except Frankenstein in limited release. Why they didn't release it on Halloween night, I have no idea. Would have been epic. Or they could have released it a little earlier and then had the Netflix release be for Halloween. No idea what they're doing. But I'll be covering Frankenstein anyway. And I'll also talk about A House of Dynamite, a Netflix thriller with reviews all over the place, which did release a week from Halloween. And finally, I'll cover Springsteen, Deliver Me From Nowhere. I got no more preamble this week. Let's just dive straight into the news. There is no news. Now it's time for the box office. So at number one, hit, new release of the week, is Regretting You, which made, how much money did it make? It made over $1 million. So yeah, it appeared in theaters just last week, I think on limited release, but now it's out. I'm going to be covering that film. I'm sure it will be quite unsuccessful, is what I've heard about it. So looking forward to seeing that. It's another adaptation of a Colleen Hoover novel, who notably, the film It Ends With Us was a huge success. Very terrible film, but a huge success, partly due to drama surrounding it. This movie doesn't have that drama around it, so I imagine after word gets out that it's pretty bad, it'll drop quite significantly. Number two, we have Chainsaw Man, the movie, Reze Arc, which I've never seen Chainsaw Man, but I've heard this movie is approachable for newcomers. So I'm going to go watch that this week. Number three, we had Springsteen, Deliver Me From Nowhere. Didn't expect this to be a huge hit. Springsteen is not a huge name in Australia. He's very much a US artist. And unlike Bohemian Rhapsody with Queen, which was very successful in Australia, one of our highest grossing movies, Springsteen doesn't have that kind of appeal like Queen does in Australia. So I think that will probably drop off, especially since the film's not connecting with people. Number four, we got Black Phone 2, still in the top 10. Then we have One Battle After Another, which is already above Tron Ares, which has dropped to number 6. And will keep dropping, I imagine. Then we have Roofman, The Bad Guys 2, still in the top 10. Number 9, we have The Travelers. And finally, number 10, I said there were no new horror films in this week, but we have Thamma, a Indian horror film about two destined lovers battling supernatural forces, family ties, and nature itself to defend their forbidden romance in a mystical world where ancient powers and prophecies threaten to keep them apart. Described here as a comedy horror thriller. I fucking eat my words. There was a new horror movie in theaters this week, and it's number 10 at the box office. So, now with that out the way, let's talk about the big new release of Frankenstein. So, Frankenstein. I have been really excited for this movie. I'm not sure if I've talked about my Del Toro love on the podcast. I first saw him when he won Best Picture for The Shape of Water. And I still stand by that film. And this is quite a similar movie to that. And it's a beautiful movie. Did it deserve Best Picture? I'm not sure about that. But his other films since then, we've had Pinocchio, which was just an incredibly lavish stop-motion, beautiful movie. We also had Nightmare Alley, which got a Best Picture nom. But before then, he was famous for making weird little horror films like Pan's Labyrinth and Kronos. He's known for making weird little dark movies. And so Frankenstein has been a project he's wanted to work on for his entire career, seemingly, and he finally got to make it. And I have tons of thoughts on the movie, but we'll start very positively. I straight up love the movie. I don't think everything works, but just like Frankenstein is for Del Toro, Frankenstein's very special to me. It's a very special novel with a masterpiece of an adaptation, the 1930s James Whale film. So there was a lot of pressure riding on this movie, especially since the reviews have been so up and down. I heard on The Big Picture them say it's terrible, and then I've heard other people say it's brilliant. It's really gone all over the place. I think it's a very successful adaptation of the book overall, and a very, very much a Del Toro movie, but I don't think it's the masterpiece it could have been. The closest comparison I have is actually the recent Nosferatu remake, which was also brilliant and accurate to a T, but baggy as hell. That's the case here. Clearly Del Toro is so in love with Frankenstein, he almost doesn't want to touch anything to avoid ruining it. Which isn't a bad thing, to try and make an adaptation as close as possible to its source material. We see the recent Dune movies having huge success by actually just doing the book. But with Frankenstein, just doing the book drags out a tragedy that everyone already understands and knows the themes of. Unlike the 30s film, though, this is a much larger world with large characters, and I feel so much more connected to the time and place through the lavish production design, added context, and of course the gore that the original film could never have. The limbs in this movie doing all sorts of weird things. The electrical bolts that zap people to life and make people go on and off. Literal people clinging to life. Their hearts start beating and go off again. A lot of crazy Del Toro stuff like that. If you're a fan of creatures, body horror, and old science equipment, this movie perfectly recreates the late 1800s time period with a bizarre Del Toro glaze over the top of everything. It's a very, very good looking film, and boldly doesn't use any black and white. It very intentionally sets its cinematography apart from the James Whale original adaptation, with these lavish long shots and behind shots, low angles, all sorts of camera tricks. I think it was a very beautifully looking movie. Production design, it'll get all those Oscar noms. What also sets it apart from the original movie is the length and expanded character depth. This is where I bumped up the most. Del Toro's love of the source material undoubtedly muddies the tragedy and impacts of its message as he tries to cram everything he's got in his head into this movie. We have lots of over-explanation when it comes to Victor Frankenstein's experiments. Del Toro even creates an entire character to make the film more plausible, casting Christoph Waltz as a benevolent supporter of Frankenstein's experiments. I believe the intention was to make the film feel more immersive. I already said how much more time and place it had, but when the movie takes as long to get to the creature as the entire length of James Whale's original film, I think we're in a bit too much depth. The fact it takes over 80 minutes at least for us to properly spend time with the creature, other than the teasers at the start, is honestly pretty devastating, especially when there's so much juice from the book left on the cutting room floor that they could have used instead of this filler crap that it felt like. I like Oscar Isaac, but his Victor Frankenstein is far less genius and much more manic. I enjoyed his relationship with his sister-in-law, played by Mia Goth, who, if the creature is the soul of the film, she is the heart. I simply wish we got to the creature faster so we could see him and Mia Goth play off of Jacob Elordi, because, unsurprisingly, he fucking kills it. He truly embodies the tragedy of being alive behind his cold, undead eyes. His performance is so physical, with every movement and grunt being heavily calculated. Every moment he was on screen, I was electrified, and he gives me those same feelings I got in that original movie. Without him, it's undoubtedly a much worse film. Overall, the length and over-explanation, they don't just lay the who is the real monster theme on thick, they beat you over the head with it. It's annoying, but it doesn't ruin the movie. Overall, Del Toro's take on one of horror's most iconic stories is as you would expect. It's lavishly beautiful, superbly performed, and a little bloated. It's like Eggers was for Nosferatu. It's so clear he loves the source material so much he wants to expand it, play with it, and tell a larger tragedy. Ultimately, he achieved that goal. It's just not quite as razor sharp as the original adaptation. But that's a very high bar to hit. Overall, I'd give this about 4.5 stars. I'm sort of rethinking doing stars as my opinion changes over time, and when I sit with a movie longer, sometimes that score fluctuates. But I'm going to keep the scores and just update you if I feel like my opinion on a film has drastically changed. because I think scores are useful in telling people your general feelings about the movie, but in the case of the next two movies, my scores will be low, but I'm still recommending them. Let's start with A House of Dynamite. Netflix's tense nuclear war thriller will keep your attention the whole way through, but might leave you at the end saying, why the fuck did I just watch this? Reviews for this movie have been all over the place. I believe we've covered this movie on the first ever Hem Productions podcast when it debuted at Venice, being nominated for the Golden Lion. Slowly, as more people have seen it, it's been getting savaged online. People saying it's stupid, laughable, manipulative, and pointless. All sorts of hate being thrown. The plot is simple. A nuclear missile is heading towards the United States in 20 minutes. We don't know who shot it, where it came from, or if we'll be able to stop it. Now, all that context, all that discourse, I'm here to say this movie is perfectly fine. Netflix makes lots of shows and movies, but not a ton for grown-ups. And you'll say, Arian, you just talked about Frankenstein. That's a very good movie for grown-ups, but that's a different kind of audience. The kind of grown-up audience I'm talking about is the one who listens to ABC News in the morning with a fat cup of coffee, still reads the paper, and at night wants to watch some gritty show starring one of their favourite actors. Something like Zero Day, a really crappy Netflix show with Robert De Niro. But that show and the similar types of shows Netflix make are dog water. And this movie isn't that at all. It's a proper movie for grown-ups directed by Catherine Bigelow, known for The Hurt Locker and Zero Dark 30, and this movie sits next to them quite nicely, even if it's one of her more minor efforts. It's not the most lavishly directed movie ever. In fact, the cinematography is quite stale for a thriller like this, but compared to Netflix standards, it's much better. The editing is quick, fast, and tense, and despite the movie breaking its rule of committing to a countdown clock, which is a big problem with the movie, it does keep your attention the whole time, despite that, which is the opposite of how most Netflix grown-up procedural shows go. The biggest thing that sets this movie apart is its structure. We witness roughly 20 minutes of the impending doom of this missile, 3 times from different perspectives. First, we're really with people observing the meetings about this missile hitting, radar kind of people, one of those big rooms. Then we have people that are in the meetings, their stories, what's happening behind the Zoom phone call, and then we focus on the president, what he was doing, blah, blah, blah. I love this kind of approach to filmmaking because it allows us to see how a previously minor character had actually lots to do with what's happening. The problem is, the balloon kind of pops in the first act. The most tension of the film is in that first act, whether this missile is going to hit or not. And the next two have those same events, and the different people involved in making those decisions, but you do know what is going to happen. There's still appeal in seeing these, seeing how real people react to end-of-world scenarios, watching in relatively real time people reacting to the end-of-the-world stakes, people, should I call people, should we start panic? And it's growing worse and worse and worse before people get a time to actually react. It's very compelling. Every now and then you get a throw off, oh, my wife's pregnant, let's increase the stakes sort of throwaway line. But I do think this is a compelling film to make. Rachel Ferguson, Gabriel Basso, and Idris Elba are the leads of each act in respective order. And I think all three give very compelling performances about different government roles reacting to a nuclear world-ending scenario. Idris does struggle with the president role, and that act is the weakest. Part of that is the choice to make this film apolitical, with no reference to what type of government this is. But I actually like that choice, because it makes the movie more about ordinary people being faced with extraordinary scenarios. The president in this movie doesn't feel ordinary. He's just being barked at a lot of orders. He has to make a lot of hard decisions very quickly, but they're decisions that we've already seen him make in the previous 2 acts. And when you finally get to this point, Idris really needs to sell some of these monologues. He doesn't quite. Ultimately, the movie overall doesn't land the plane. It has a lot of great and compelling elements, and for some, the ending might feel like a satisfying culmination of it all. But for me, I think its appeal remains as an interesting character study, an observational drama of how the end of the world could take place, that ends with a wet fart. There are many moments, performances, and character details that kept my interest, and even though I ultimately think it's unsuccessful, it's undoubtedly a thrill ride that would be perfect to watch over the holidays with families. If you like nuclear thrillers, this is one of them. If you like kind of behind-the-scenes political thrillers, this is one of them. And as far as grown-up, non-art house Netflix movies goes, this is okay. But it's not the Oscar contender I thought it could have been, especially considering the talent behind it. I'd give this about 3.5 stars. And speaking of movies, lesser than the talent in them, we've got Springsteen, Deliver Me From Nowhere. Now this one hurts a bit. Another year, another music biopic, and this time they're taking another one of my favourite American singers, Bruce Springsteen. Quality-wise, this movie lands right between A Complete Unknown and Bohemian Rhapsody. It's not a great movie, it's not a disaster. It attempts the mature, confident character study structure that almost won Chalamet an Oscar, while also having your fights with record producers, musicians writing masterworks in 10 seconds, and usual Oscar bait crap that actually won Rami Malek an Oscar. So, who's to say who's right when it comes to these movies? Written and directed by Scott Cooper, there are signs of a masterwork here. What's strange is I assume he got the final cut, so I don't see why he has smushed two completely different kinds of music biopics into one. Maybe that's the reality of getting this kind of movie made in Hollywood. You can't run away from having the stupid scenes that work with test audiences and idiot executives because you need money to license the songs. And this movie has a lot of stupid stuff like that. Bruce looks at a mansion on a hill, then writes mansion on a hill. Bruce reads the title of a script, Born in the USA. Then guess what he does? He writes Born in the USA. Jeremy Strong is cast as Bruce's longtime manager, John Lando, and his character entirely exists for the type of scenes that stink of Bohemian Rhapsody. He's always arguing with executives. He is the only other perspective of the movie. But ultimately, that's not what this movie is. Sometimes this movie does excel. In its most quiet moments, Jeremy Allen White's performance shines so bright. And so does the filmmaking. It's here where Cooper makes a kind of tragic movie about a man quietly struggling with depression while on the precipice of success. It's a man haunted by black and white flashbacks of his father that lead him to write Nebraska, a folk album that was a complete deviation from his previous work, and you understand how it was a deviation in these small moments. It's a grim and unusual tone that you never see from this kind of movie, and if it had leaned all the way into that, we could have had a masterpiece. Jeremy Allen White may not look like Bruce Springsteen, but fuck does he sound like him. It's a very quiet performance, with so much of the movie relying on White to convey the confusion and pain going inside Bruce. It's not an Oscar bait performance. In fact, there's not a huge amount of performance. You wouldn't confuse this movie for a musical, and I think that will lead lots of audiences to being turned off. Makes me question why the movie was made at all, trying to suit both critics and audiences, Bruce Springsteen fans and non-fans. We just get this really messed up kind of hodgepodge. It really was whiplash going from these beautiful personal and intimate scenes, some scenes between Strong and Bruce having real moments of male friendship I found quite poignant and beautiful. So when the smash cuts back to him telling a producer there'll be no press, no tours, and his face won't be on the cover because we believe in Bruce, I groaned so heavily. There's such a poignant story in here that is being strangled to death by the Hollywood machine. It almost feels like a middle finger to make this movie about Nebraska, when the whole movie is fighting against the core of what drove Bruce to make that album. Pure expression. Instead, the movie has to remind you at the end that Bruce suffered from depression because it's too busy trying to make epic movie star moments out of writing Born in the USA that it's worried you might forget. Overall, I loved half this movie. If it was significantly shorter with a clearer focus on what kind of movie they wanted to make, they could have hit the same bar as Walk the Line or A Complete Unknown, or at least had a few moments that would get Jeremy an Oscar. There's a much better performance here than Rami Malek, and possibly even than Chalamet, but he doesn't get a chance to show it off. Instead, we've got an uneven, not a disaster, not a hit, just another music biopic. 2.5 out of 5 stars. I'd recommend it to Bruce Springsteen fans or people who want to catch up on what could be a Best Actor movie. But really, this doesn't suit anybody, and it's very unfortunate. I guess it's my Halloween scare for the week. Anyway, no real updates to Hem Productions this week. Just wanted to talk about these movies and to say that this podcast really keeps me sharp. Updates are on their way. I keep heading towards goals for the company, but I don't want to tease much until they're well and truly coming through the pipeline. So for now, I'll just say have a great week, happy Halloween, and 1, 2, Freddy's coming for you.